Hello, I'm Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and welcome to my blog, where it's both my mission and my pleasure to highlight my creative journey in hopes of inspiring you, giving you a specific takeaway, so that way your creative journey can be at least a little bit easier. Now, before I fully get into things, I would like to take the opportunity to invite you to subscribe if you haven't already. That way you get all the various lessons and episodes that I put out right when I put them out. Thank you if you just did, and thank you if you already were. It truly does mean a lot to me, as I hope it does to you. So let's get into it. This past week, a lot of stuff going on, some of it personal, which I've talked about in last week's episode in terms of dealing with my dog, Chloe. But, so I'll kind of touch upon that and provide an update a little bit more towards the end. But just to not leave you in a suspense, overall things are going well, or as well as they can be. But really, it was a week of both a lot of creative and a lot of logistical stuff as far as my upcoming movie is concerned. But the biggest news of all, before I get into any of that, is my first feature film called Love Market is now officially out. That's right. I've been talking about that film on my blog for a number of years in terms of, dating back to when we first started doing it, all the way to then editing it, submitting it to the Cannes Film Festival, not getting into the Cannes Film Festival, but winning a bunch of film festivals, and so forth. And, then the time in which, we got a distributor, but they were finding a home for it and so forth. So as of now, it is available, Love Market. It is on Amazon at the moment, and it will hit streaming platforms, or at least a streaming platform, one that I know of should be coming in mid-September. So I'll keep you posted on that, but as of now, you can check it out on Amazon. The link is provided to you down below. So for all the mystery of all the things that I've ever been talking about, if you've been following along in terms of my first feature film, or even the methodology going into my second one, you can now really see the end result of all of that and, see how it kind of came together and what it was all about, and hopefully enjoy it. I think, from the people that have seen it, they have enjoyed it. Obviously, it has won film festivals and things like that, which is, just a great recognition. And yeah, to me, what's great about it is it captures a time of LA in this sort of certain innocence, pre-COVID, pretty much like we filmed just before COVID really hit, wrapping up in basically December of 2019. So, to me, it's a very special movie, and I think it's a little gem of a movie. Yes, there are improvements that could be made and things like that, but, the fact that we made it on a $5,000 budget, and it looks much, much more than that, I think deserves to be recognized, and so go check it out. I think, Love Market. So that's the big exciting news of the week. The other thing, I was talking about, my upcoming feature film. So, you always want to have something the thing of it is, when you finish a project, it can take some time to get it out into the world. And so certainly, as if you listen to any of the past vlogs, you're aware of that I have been keeping busy in the ways that I can. And the biggest one currently is doing a second feature film. So even though, I knew that this one was going to eventually come out, I didn't know exactly when, but I knew that it was going to, I wasn't going to just kind of hang my hat on that and just be like, okay, when's that one come out? And then I'll start the new one. No, as soon as I'm creatively and logistically done with that one, as I was, mid-2020, mid to late 2020, I should actually say, I started thinking about the next stuff. And so that's culminated into an upcoming feature film for me, my second one, that will be shot in Colombia in the first 2 weeks of November, really. And so this past week, I went clothes shopping with one of the actors to get some of the wardrobe stuff that we needed to get for this person. And that was pretty fun, Wardrobe is a fun reflection of the character. And so we went to a mall, a big mall, Century City Mall, and just walked around, various shops and tried to get. Now, it's very interesting, some of the styles that I had wanted, I think partly because of the pandemic, selection's a lot more limited. So we couldn't get as much of the things we wanted to physically. A, either they didn't have the styles that we wanted, or B, ironically, they have a lot of smalls and extra smalls, but nothing like medium or large, which we were sort of looking for. So we got as many of the things as we could on that day, and then, we're gonna fill out the rest of it at a different store. We found some stuff as we were, kind of walking around. We also started looking online of like where we can get the missing pieces. And yeah, we'll fill it out, and kind of, and that goes for everybody else, There was another person that, we kind of took a step back with the wardrobe and we're like, what if we started from scratch? What, I know it was kind of heading in this direction, but the actor themselves pointed out, it doesn't feel quite right. What if we went in this direction? And I'll show you some options. Okay, let's do it. And, I saw it and I was like, okay, great. That works for me. Let's do it. So we're moving forward with that. Last week, really, we had individual meetings with all the actors. And that was, again, half creative, half logistical in that sense to just allow for that, attention towards each individual, each actor, so that way they can ask the questions, both creative and procedural. And so it was myself and Kenny Harrison on the Zoom with them, and we went over stuff and, played some clips from the movie, went over individual questions and protocol of how we see things. And yeah, it was good to get that. It's not exactly one-on-one FaceTime, but relatively in that spirit, that one-on-one FaceTime to give that individual attention and really see where everyone's head's at. That was good, and answer the questions. And, of course, as you sort of talk with each person, it sparks something else as well. And you bring that into the next conversation, and then you kind of roll it all up into, a culmination of this thing. One thing in particular that we've been sort of thinking about is, how to approach COVID within this movie. We don't want to shy away from it, but we don't want to make it a COVID movie specifically. And, we had a rehearsal this Wednesday with two of the actors, and we did some, there's a particular heavy scene, if you will, that we were going over. And for some reason, just based on how one of the actors was asking a question, it just clicked for me, moments later of like, this is the line that I'm talking about. And then it opened up our eyes to, okay, this is how we can also incorporate like this little bit in itself. And I'm being vague about it, I understand, but that little bit is what kind of denotes that, COVID's a part of this world without, so the audience will get it without having to be overly heavy-handed. And that informed kind of how we'll go into production. So the idea of, there's going to be certain scenes where they'll have to have a mask because we're in, some sort of indoor public place. And so making a face mask part of the costuming, and just letting it be. And again, not necessarily drawing attention to it, it's just part of the world that they exist as far as characters. So it was good, in that sense to have these sort of breakthroughs. And the other aspect of it being that there's a good excitement towards the film, everyone in their own way. Like it's, as I said, they have their own individual perspectives into things, but really it all boils down to there's an excitement level there, and seeing the ways in which what people are excited about is also fun. Not that one's better than the other, but it's cool, to see, because some of the stuff, wasn't even necessarily on my radar, but when you really kind of consider, you're like, oh yeah, that is really cool, and yeah, now that you've put it in my mind, I'm going to think about that, and that's awesome, and that elevates this. So, yeah, the tide rises collectively, if you will, right? I don't think that's the exact quote, but you get what I'm saying. The other part of it was, So that was the actor / cast perspective. Then we also were doing a big check-in with the production team, and we were originally supposed to have that Thursday, but we pushed it back to Saturday, just because of timing and things like that. And that was a good sort of check-in because not everyone from the production team had met each other. And so, just getting names to faces and seeing, where everyone's out there and kind of getting to talk it out, that was also a very productive thing. So overall, what you always want to try to do is just you don't want to have meetings for the sake of just having a meeting. You want there to be a purpose, and certainly with each meeting, on my end at least, there was an agenda, and I allowed people to throw in their things as they needed it to. But all the same, you want to have those check-ins at specific periods. This for us was pretty much the 2-month marker, right? So we're 2 months, or at least at the time. Now we're just, less than 8 weeks, if you will, from going out and filming. And so that was an important check-in for all of us. And, as I said to the actors, really, I want to get them away from the logistical side as much as possible, certainly by the end of September, so that way October they can focus on the creative aspects, as much as they can solely, as opposed to worrying about anything logistical. Conversely, with us, as far as production, kind of the same thing. I want us to handle the logistics as much as we can, the big stuff, and then make adjustments as time goes by. One of the things that's interesting about it, obviously, we live in COVID times, so that naturally affects things day to day. The other aspect is Colombia is a different country, right? But with that, there's also a different culture in how they do things. So, certainly just approaching that has been an interesting learning curve. It's just different. It's not like one's better than the other, but it's being able to rely on my friends in Colombia to teach me how things are approached, and that setting the expectations of X, Y, and Z. That's kind of the big aspect of it. And I love learning that. I think that's wonderful, and we're acclimating to their system because ultimately we are the guests. So, and then the other aspect really has been the scheduling of the film, and so Kenny has been really honing in the schedule as best he can, especially with so many elements changing and things like that. And so I saw a draft of what he had created, and one of the things as I kind of looked at it, I was like, I think I have an idea. And part of it is, I think in having listened to the Team Deacons podcast, one of the things that you learn by listening to the various episodes that are there is that part of it's an individualistic preference, right? And so, he's doing it from a certain vantage point, and for me, there's a certain comfort level as far as how to try to film and sequences, right? As much as I can, I try to get in a groove of what I call sequences, right? So, if, let's say, I'm just making something up, but if characters go out, they meet together, then they go out to lunch, and then they have a conversation at lunch, and then they exit and go home. My goal, especially with that, is to try to keep it, at least that, as much as possible together rather than breaking it up. Which, of course, it's a movie, so, you can break it up however you want, ultimately, because it's going to get pieced together in editing. But still, as much as possible, for me, it's preferable to try to have some sort of sequencing. And, Kenny looks at it from a different perspective, right? And that's great because he offers something that I don't. And so, but I think together, using his schedule as a jumping off point, what I did was kind of go through it and make my own adjustments to it of like, okay, here's what I think would work for me a little bit better and things of that nature, right? And again, all in all, it's going to be always like an ever-changing thing, but one of the things, like, he uses Studio Binder, and I I highly love Studio Binder. I just don't have access to it at the moment. And so what I did was put it into a Google spreadsheet. And sometimes it's interesting how, like, sometimes having crude tools can drive a result. Because one of the things, that I also kind of think is, like, for me, Studio Binder is great, but sometimes it has too much information and excuse me, too much information, and so it can, like, it's good in some sense because it color coordinates, day versus night and so forth, but sometimes it makes it, just visually hard to read. At least it does for me. And so, for me, I just wanted to kind of take a step back, and so by putting into something simple as a Google spreadsheet, I was able to just make the adjustments a lot easier, because it's like I could have a bird's eye view of the situation rather than be in the nitty gritty. And then, based off of that, as I said to Kenny, like, hey, I think I have, an adjusted version that I've been toying around with that combines, what you did along with some of the things I'd like to see. And, now you can translate that into the Studio Binder. But that's just another aspect of it. Like, Studio Binder is a great tool, but it's about, on average, like, to get the things that, you would really want, it's about $80 a month. And, Kenny's got it, so that's fantastic. For Love Market, I paid for Studio Binder for the months that I needed it, which was only like 3 months. I made it very specific, so I wasn't using it unnecessarily. But you don't need those tools necessarily. Sometimes just, even index cards can be the thing to do. Like, it's all doable, and whatever methodology you use to get the result, as long as you get the result, that's all that really matters, right? I mean, of course, you want to be a little as efficient with it as possible, but still, sometimes just, and again, even just, that's why, like, for me, I like to work at the speed of thought. So, like, even pre-Kenny doing his round of, schedule in terms of the Studio Binder, we just kind of laid it out on a piece of paper of, like, okay, what would be the ideal be? Okay, here's, on this day, if we did all this, that would be great. And then, he goes and pieces it together and sees, like, okay, what are the flaws in the initial thinking that we had based on just that paper edit, and so forth, right? You start to see, as you dive in deeper, you start to see the pitfalls and so forth. But you want to have that constant, like, you're, seeing the details and not overlooking them, but then also taking a step back, then going into the details and so forth, right? So it's all a process. That's all it really is. But yeah, that's really, as far as the creative side is concerned, that's the long and short of it, if you will. The last part that I made mention was my dog. Big week last week of just getting answers, right? Doing examinations, continuing, taking care of her with acupuncture. And so, now what it looks like is that she has a herniated disc. So, figuring out the best protocol for that, because, she's 13 years old. So, it's not affecting her where she can't go to the bathroom or can't ultimately walk. So in that sense, a surgery would be beneficial, and she, that's a higher success rate than when a dog can't walk or, urinate and so forth, right? However, at her age of 13, yes, there is concern of, putting her under for surgery. So right now we're just kind of, deciding, what the best way is, and just slightly being conservative about it, of, medications, and seeing how she takes to those things, and kind of, still doing acupuncture, but seeing after 2 weeks, are there improvements, are there not, and kind of taking it from there. So yeah, just, doing the best we all can under the circumstances. That's kind of where we're at, and overall, the medication seems to be helping. Certainly she has her down moments, but overall, she still looks happy and lively. It's just, we're sort of on limited walks, making sure she's not straining herself, but at the same time, not a couch potato. So, yeah, that's kind of where we're at. So thank you for those of you who've reached out and asked and so forth. We just take it as we can, as it comes. And I think that's a good life philosophy. Anyway, thank you for taking the time to tune in. I hope this was helpful. The last thing before I truly head out, I want to make mention that I announced it last week, but I'm going to be involved with the Financially Fit Foundation in a greater capacity. I've talked about finances and how to be better with finances in past episodes, and I will continue to do so because now I'm going to continue to be more and more educated on it. And the wonderful thing is you can too, directly through the Financially Fit Foundation, and it's all free. That's the wonderful thing about it. It's a charity. Their goal is to educate people to have knowledge of finances and be well off, and as the title implies, be financially fit. And so if you just go to financiallyfitfoundation.org, the link is also in the description, you will be able to, see what they're all about, see their various resources like the book, and their various seminars and so forth that they've got coming up. So it's a wonderful, wonderful resource. That's why I've joined them, because I believe in their mission and so forth, right? And want to just continue to spread the word, because spreading the word ultimately means it helps people learn about, how to manage wealth, how to manage their money, and so forth, which is a big, big thing to learn that unfortunately our society doesn't really put an emphasis on and teach, and it's really sad. And so organizations like this are truly needed, and that's why I'm grateful to be a part of it. Anyway, that's it. As always, you can ask any questions, whether about any of the stuff that I talked about or stuff that I didn't talk about that you're curious about. I will happily try to answer them in the comments section, or if it warrants something larger, then I'll make a lesson out of it, right? That's the beauty. And plus, it's just great to converse with you, I love doing this, but ultimately, I love the interaction, the camaraderie of it all, if you will. Because I think as artists, we all should uplift each other in some sense, right? So thank you, I appreciate you, and hope to see you next time.